I think it really captured a lot of complicated emotions in a really sort of a simple way. I'm going to try not to talk too much and just get through it. It's a Neil Young song called Ohio. 10 soldiers and Nixon coming, we're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming for dead in Ohio. Gotta get down to it, soldiers are cutting us down. Should have been done long ago. What if you knew her and found her dead on the ground? How can you run when you know? Tim soldiers and Nixon coming, we're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming for dead in Ohio. Gotta get down to it, soldiers are cutting us down. Should have been done long ago. What if you knew her and found her dead on the ground? How can you run when you For dead in Ohio, 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 for dead in Ohio.
Of 1970. The shots fired by the National Guard on that day will be forever etched in the hearts and minds of not only those who were here at Kent State, but on the hearts and minds of Americans who have grappled with the meaning of the events of that day ever since. To the families and friends of the 4 young lives cut short, Allison Krause, Jeffrey Miller, Sandra Scheuer, and William Schroeder, we will always remember and honor the tragic loss of your loved ones at the height of their youth, and with all of their dreams and aspirations yet to be fulfilled. We will remember. Loss of their lives and those who lost their lives on another American university campus at that time make us work all the harder to ensure the tragedy of May 4th, 1970 is never repeated. You have our pledge that the history made here at Kent State and its lasting legacy will be long remembered for its lifelong impact on our people, our university, our country, and especially those killed or injured that day and their families. The spirit of those lost on May 4th will live on as long as students walk across this hallowed ground, as long as young minds fill our classrooms with a desire for knowledge and understanding, and as long as each new generation seeks to effect positive change in our society. The voices of May 4th, 1970 will forever inspire future generations who will lead new movements of peaceful and purposeful civil activism. The lessons of this day that we gather to commemorate are as vital now as they were 49 years ago.
Tell me how on earth could it be justified for heartless men to have taken those innocent lives? And how many more tears do we have to cry before our hearts are all run dry, leaving only us to ask the question, why? Oh, why? Words from a song I wrote for the Krause family some years ago, dedicated to those killed, wounded, all those affected by the events of May 4th, 1970, and similar incidences of government oppression and brutality. A song called Truth and Justice. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carlos Jones. I'm a musician. I live in Cleveland, Ohio, Shaker Heights to be exact. I'm here today at the request of the family of Allison Beth Krause to speak for her as we commemorate the 49th year since that particular tragedy. At first, when asked to do this, I questioned my qualification to do so, as some might. After all, I did not know her. I was not there. I was 12 years old at the time, doing the things that a 12-year-old kid living a quiet and comfortable life in the suburbs might do. Of course, I had been growing up in a time when the news of many horrors and tragedies brushed up against my budding awareness. I knew that people who tried to do good could be assassinated, taken out. John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy's deaths were all part of my recent inventory of knowledge. I knew about the ongoing legacy of slavery and the struggle for equality and civil rights, through which my parents and their ancestors had lived, and that so many were still living. And it was almost as if we were to accept these things as a matter of course. We were taught in school about the glorified wars of our mighty nation, and all of the heroes who helped to bring us to our status as a noble and benevolent overseer of the world. I knew about the war that was going on in Vietnam, or what I was being told of it anyway. Then there were those that were older than me, like Allison, that had questions. From what I've learned of her, Allison Krause was a bright, warm, loving, caring, energetic, intelligent, and free-thinking young woman who had the audacity to question the veracity of the things our government claimed to be the reason for sending thousands of our young men and women to a foreign country to never return, or to return broken in pieces, physically and mentally. She was a young woman full of hope, full of life and promise, who had set out to further her education to one day become a productive citizen and perhaps contribute to positive and peaceful change in our society. But she had questions. She knew there was much unrest in the world and all around her. She knew that there were things wrong with our country that she and her peers felt compelled to speak out against. And she also knew that there were some who had taken their protests to the extreme and perhaps in the wrong direction, or maybe even had a totally different agenda altogether. A young woman who one day might have children of her own, that she would have to teach and guide and somehow shield from the tragic truth until they grew old enough to discern that not all is what it seems or what you've been led to believe. But that was not to be. We had men in positions of power determined to hold fast to the old way of doing things and maintain the status quo. And saw those who wanted and demanded change as annoyances and rabble-rousers. We had a president who claimed that he was not a crook. And as it turned out, he was telling us the truth. He was worse. And because of heartless decisions made by men who saw these young people, your sons and daughters, as nothing more than bums, outlaws, and hooligans, well, no need to state the obvious, you know why we're here. It was a beautiful day in May, unlike this one. Allison Krause was exercising what she had always been told was her right to protest what she felt, what she knew was wrong, even while knowing that there could be consequences for doing such a thing. She could face arrest, retribution, brutality, perhaps even death. No, they couldn't possibly go that far, could they? She and her fellow students faced off against uniformed men with rifles, choking against clouds of tear gas. Think about that. A lot of you know. That day, this day in May, we were awakened to the cold hard fact that you can be murdered in broad daylight, no matter who you are, by your own government for being disobedient, for being vocal, for being active, for being a protester. And that day, a 12-year-old kid felt the chill of that reality, and his childhood fell away as if shedding a skin, and he became aware that there was indeed something terribly wrong, and there was no going back to any semblance of childlike innocence. I, like all of you, was changed forever. Her father, Arthur, has long since passed, worn down in the remainder of his life by the obstinate and apathetic demeanor of a government with no pity and no remorse. Yet he fought all the way to the Supreme Court for the right to sue the state of Ohio. And had become a staunch advocate for the right to protest. Her mother, Doris, more recently passed on, lived out her final years carrying the weight of the heartbreak, sadness, and loss, with no apology, no closure, no resolution whatsoever, except for a statement of regret. And a mere token of a $15,000 legal settlement, which apparently is what a protester's life is worth, well, according to those with the power to make those kinds of decisions. They were never able to experience any type of healing or relief from the devastation that haunted them for the rest of their lives. We hear these words thrown about quite often: truth, freedom, liberty, justice for all. Pretty words, but what do they mean? What is truth? It would seem that we live in a time when truth is whatever the loudest voice says it is, or the ones with the most money. The concept of truth has lost its weight, its value. This is the age of alternative facts. We have to ask ourselves, has it always been this way? And justice, now there's a slippery one, as elusive as trying to grab smoke. We're led to believe that it is an absolute thing, but unfortunately we've seen and we've learned that it is not equal and is not easily attainable. Someone asked me recently, why are we here? And I answered without even really thinking about it, I think we were put here to plant flowers. By that, I mean that it's up to each person who is inclined to do so to try and add more beauty to a world that is too often marred by ugliness. to shine more light in times when darkness threatens to surround and swallow us up, to love more fearlessly and ferociously in a time when hatred rears its head and wants to divide us, to help each other heal from our past hurts and his hostilities and try to become our better selves. That's why I'm here. I tried to think of what Allison might say if she were here today, had she been spared. I think she most certainly would be here talking to you instead of me. So who am I to speak for her? The question is more, who am I not to? She's my sister, and she is your sister. Maybe not by blood, but by the common humanity we all share. It could have been anybody that day, your brother, your sister, the woman or man who would become your mother or father. The government-issued bullets that found their deadly mark that day were lethal, uncaring, and indiscriminate, and brought only violence, pain, and death. So I'd have to agree with Allison. Flowers are better than bullets. In closing, I would just like to share this with you. I've been coming to these commemorations for many, many years. And one memorable afternoon, as everyone was leaving, a couple of young students passed by me, and I overheard one young girl chirp happily to her friend, "Yeah, she used to be a hippie, but she forgot how to love." Well, I'm here to tell you today, let's not forget how to love. Love can heal. I will rain down sweet music from the hillside to heal the place where bullets rained before, and offer up my prayers for the fallen and the wounded. Dedicate my life to love and peace instead of war. Dedicate my life to love and peace instead of war. Because that's all I am truly living for. Thank you.